This Xbox Series X was sent to a repair company. The repair company said that it had too many broken HDMI traces and they couldn't fix it. They were still able to charge the customer $99 though, even though they didn't do a thing to fix it. The customer happened to be one of my viewers named John. He offered to sell it to me for $400 so I can make this video trying to fix it. Did the repair company damage it more than it was already damaged, or is that how it was when John sent it in? Let's take it apart and find out. This video is sponsored by JLCPCB, more on them in a minute. I'm not saying that it's absolutely required to clean a console if you're taking it apart to repair it, but I'm also saying why not just give it a little brush off while you're in there? It's that easy. And we definitely have a thermal paste issue. None of that has been replaced. Also, you can see over here, somebody has added a bunch of fresh thermal paste on what would be the mounting pins for this HDMI port. Let's look at the top side. So, the question is, do we believe that the repair shop did this damage or did not do this damage? So the first thing I notice right here is there's some old flux on this board. And when there's old flux on the board, that tells me that the board has been heated. That also tells me that likely what happened is the repair shop that John sent this to tried to remove this HDMI port, and in the process they pulled up, it looks like almost all of the pads on the board. Let's get it under a scope and see if we can fix this one. And here we can see a little closer what I was talking about. All of this would not be on this board if the port simply was loose. So this repair shop pulled this port off, charged the customer $99, told them that they couldn't fix it, and gave it back. I do want to make clear that there are a lot of really great repair shops, and most good repair shops can do this type of job no problem. So this is going to be a fun one. We've got 5 pads that are connected. All the rest of these pads are going to have to be redone by hand, rebuilt by hand. So sit back and relax. This is going to take a while. Not only does JLCPCB offer printed circuit board assembly services, they are now also offering 3D printing services. Both PCB services and 3D printing services can all be ordered right on their website. Your 3D printed products take about a week of shipping time to get to the United States. They sent me out this sample 3D printed part. Let's take a look at it and check out the quality. They sent me out this 3D printed enclosure that comes in 2 pieces. Let's take a little closer look at it. Now, I'm not a 3D printing expert, but it seems like a lot of times with 3D printing, you don't really get like clean edges. And I'm noticing on here, these edges are just super clean. And then as it fits together, you have a pretty nice tight fit. There's not really any play in there. It's not really something that I would even notice was 3D printed. It's that good of quality. If you're interested in trying out their 3D printing services, you can go right to jlcpcb.com. Then you just need to attach your files. And then after the files are attached, you can see the price for getting your product produced. They offer great prices and fast shipping to the US. Go to jlcpcb.com to get started. I'll leave a link in the description that'll take you right there. So here I'm just using my hot air soldering station to remove the HDMI port. I just heat up these mounting pins you see right here until the solder is fluid and melts, and then the port will just fall right out. Now once the old HDMI port comes out, I need to reheat these mounting pins, and then I'll bring the new port up under the motherboard while keeping the heat on the mounting pins, and then the new port will just slide right in because all the solder is liquid. And then once the new HDMI port is installed, I will remove the heat and let the solder solidify, and that will keep the new HDMI port in those pins so it won't fall out. Now sometimes the HDMI port isn't quite mounted in there fully onto the motherboard, so I'll come in with my tweezers and put some pressure on the port, and once the solder on the mounting pins melts, then I can push the port further up into those mounting pins, and that will make sure that the port is mounted flush on the board. Now once the port is installed, I come in with my soldering iron and I try to solder on any of the pins that still have a pad there to solder to. And then even the ones that don't, I'll still put a little bit of solder on the pin. That will just make it easier when I am soldering on the replacement trace wire. These pins are so close together that sometimes a bridge forms That just means that solder is touching two of the pins at once, and we don't want that to happen because that'll make the HDMI port not work. So normally how I clear a bridge like this is I'll put on some extra flux sometimes just to help the solder flow as well as it's going to, and then I use a little bit of solder braid that will remove some of the solder, and sometimes I can just bring in a bigger iron that has more heat, and that will actually kind of collect some of the solder on the iron and remove it from the pins. So now I'm going to come in with some teeny tiny wire that has an enamel coating on it. One of the fastest ways to remove the coating is just to burn it off with my iron. That makes it so I can solder it onto the pin of the HDMI port. Now once it's connected to one side of the pin, then I come down and I melt some more of the enamel coating off. Then I can solder the wire down to the trace on the board. I always make sure there's plenty of flux and plenty of solder, and that gives a nice strong joint. Now, as you can see, this is quite a time-consuming and tedious job, but at the same time, it's really cool to be able to do this type of job and bring something back to life that's this damaged. So now we have most of these traces fixed. We've got these jumper wires soldered on there good, except for that one. That's why I'm testing them right now, so I'll need to resolder that one. All the rest of them look really good. They're on there nice and solidly. So we have one more main problem. This trace and this trace and this trace all go to the other side of the board. And when we look on the other side of the board, these are the three places that those little traces go that go into this HDMI booster chip. So we're going to need to bring a wire from the top side of the board over here down to the bottom side and connect it right along here. That's not really an ideal thing to do, but at the same time, as long as we make sure there's not a bunch of extra wire to get caught on stuff, it should work fine. In order to be able to solder these little tiny circuits on the board, we need to remove the coating that is on top of them. It's called solder mask, and the solder mask protects the metal on the circuit. So we need to scrape that away so we can get down to the metal. Now, sometimes I use just a sharp pick. Other times I use a little motorized tool, sort of like a Dremel, with a bit on the end that will just kind of grind that solder mask away. And without scraping that solder mask away, there'll just be nothing for the solder or the wire to stick to. So we have those three done. Now I'm going to add some solder mask onto these wires right here. This just sort of protects them and makes sure they don't make connection with anything else. This isn't usually necessary for most of the stuff I do, but it makes it look nicer. This stuff is definitely a little bit too thick to make it look really nice. But like I said, it should still work fine. It'll still do the job, it just won't look as good. Just like me! And now the UV light. Now that that's hardened, it protects these wires and gives them a little bit of extra strength. I'm going to go through and do that for the rest of these wires, especially these longer ones. I'm going to put some underneath those wires, and then I will put some on top of these wires as well to help hold those down. And now all we have to do is put in the perfect amount of thermal paste and get this Xbox put back together. So this is definitely a problem. We've got a bunch of this viscous thermal paste up here. It needs to be spread all along these chips right here to keep all these chips cool. So I'm going to kind of re-spread this out and hopefully not get this stuff too dirty so it'll still cool really well. I don't know that there's necessarily supposed to be any on this one, but we do have enough in here we can put some on there. It's not going to hurt anything, that's for sure. Okay, I think that is pretty good. Now we can install this next metal plate, knowing that all these will be kept nice and cool. So now we have it all back together after fixing all of those traces. I really hope this works. Let's see if it turns on and shows a picture on the screen. Okay, we got a light. It doesn't make a noise, but it does have a light. Oh, come on. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. So we just saved another Xbox Series X for $400. That was a decent deal, even though it was a ton of work fixing all those traces. If you like this type of video, I made a video where I tried to fix a PS5 that 2 other repair shops tried to fix before me. I'll put the link for that video up on your screen now so you can come hang out with me over there and see if I can fix it. Thank you again to JLCPCB for sponsoring this video. If you're interested in checking them out, I'll put a link right in the description. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you have a good one.